Welcome to the Top 10 Gardener with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener. Your host, Ken Lain, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. And we are finally, it's finally in the 70s. What this means is your gardens, once they start to flower or leaf out, once they start to grow, you need to turn that irrigation on. It's time. And you can literally start planting flowers and vegetables. It's planting season. That 70 mark seems to set the stage. But mainly right now, I'm starting to tweak and adjust my own irrigation at my house. And I think you should be doing the same thing. So, and the clue is your daffodils are in bloom. The forsythia are they've got golden yellow. Your purple leaf plums are in full that pink bloom. The Bradford pears have that white flower all over them. It's this time that leaves are starting to show up on your roses. These are things that they're starting, once they start doing that, it takes moisture to do that. And so especially if we get a little cold snap, which is very possible through April, you should water things right before the cold comes, because a hydrated plant goes through the cold much better than a dry plant, especially your fruit trees. So if you've got fruit trees, so I noticed the cherries just started to crack color this week. And so they'll get more glorious in the next 10 days or so. They'll be going to full bloom. Well, as they open up, they'll need a moisture to keep that going. And if that flower is exposed to freezing weather, it can damage the flower. If the fruit that forms very shortly, you'll start to see little tiny apricots and peaches and nectarines and cherries and apples and pears. As that fruit forms and it freezes, it's like taking a plum and throw it in the freezer, and then you bring it back out and let it thaw. What happens to it? It turns to mush. And so you don't want your trees to do that. Now, the insider tip on this for fruit trees, at 32 degrees, you lose 10% of your fruit mass, mainly the outer tips, those upper edges, because the core of the plant's still protected by the heart of that tree. At 31 degrees, you lose about 20%. The magic number is 28. At 28 degrees, you lose all the fruit. And so all the flowers, all the fruit, if they're cracked, the flowers open or the fruit is on, that's when the damage. If that flower bud is closed, it's protected. It insulates, it's got a shield on it. And so you don't have to worry about things that haven't opened yet. So I notice the apples have not cracked. They've not opened up or flowering yet, at least at these higher elevations. Maybe over in the Verdes, the next elevation down. But even then, it'll be middle to the end of this month when that really takes off. But your apricots, they're starting to bloom. Plums, they've started to bloom. Cherries just opened this week. Here in Prescott at 5,700 feet, that's where I'm at. They just opened. And so when that happens, you want to put a sheet, something that breathes over that flower to keep the frost floating above the tree. Plants have a way of insulating themselves. And so if you can keep the frost off of them, permeating down in the inside, the heart of the core of that tree or that shrub, then you can keep the fruit intact. Some of your neighbors, they're not crazy. They've got a sheet over them. They got a light underneath. It's like they're glow in the dark, like they're creating little ghosts out there floating around the gardens. Well, they're putting a heat source. A little bit of heat with some covering makes a huge difference. But at 32, you lose a little bit. At 31, you lose a little more. At 30, you lose about half. At 28, you don't want your plants to go to 28 if they're a fruiting plant. If it's a flowering plant, so what? It'll leaf out right after that. That's just kind of something to watch as we go into the fruiting season right now. The fruit trees are actively starting to go. You should definitely turn your irrigation on when that happens. Keeps them blooming and protects them. So a hydrated plant, in fact, I like to hose down the ground underneath my fruit trees, because there's something about water as it freezes, it releases energy. There's something about that there's some physics that I don't understand, but I know it works. So it'll gain you a degree or two more in cold temperature before damage really uh, eats through and permeates the entire tree. So hydrate plants. Watering, you're probably right now. I'm setting my clocks in the morning. I'm trying to be at dawn. So 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I want to hydrate things before the heat of the day. So I'm watering deep soak my trees and shrubs. Hour and a half, 2 hours. My drip system is on. So it's a micro irrigation dripping 2 gallon per hour head, or 1 to 2 gallons, pretty normal. It's got to run for 1 to 2 hours before you get a gallon of water out there. So that's a 1 gallon per hour head. It's got to run for an hour before 1 gallon of water is dripped into that spot in the garden. So you got to run these systems a long time. I'm watering those trees and shrubs about once a week. That's for right now. That's more than enough. My flowering things, more often. So flowering things, containers, vegetables, herbs, especially new things, new pansy, hanging baskets that I just got. Just brought one home. It's glorious. I'm watering that every other day. My containers, bigger pots, whether it's a rose in a pot or container or just flowers, every 3 days right now. That's where I'm at. And so as it heats up, I'll do it more frequently. So that's and you should be close to that, I would imagine. Okay. Fruit, your vegetables. This is the week that we started full complement, as many as we can get. Not every variety is in stock right now. Like I don't have the funky, weird, interesting marjoram. I don't have that yet in herbs, but I got all the other sages, all the other strawberries, all the other rosemaries and lavenders and oreganos and thymes. They're here. You could put those in now. One that I would watch a little bit would be my basil. Basil's a little wimpy when it comes to, if it gets below 45, basil's not happy. So, but thyme, it doesn't care. Lavender, they don't care. Rosemary, they don't care. Basil and cilantro, those two I can think of are the ones that I might wait a couple weeks before I put that in, but all the others, go ahead. All of your leafy stuff. I mean, bok choy to broccoli to cauliflower, you should feel pressure. You should get these in the ground now. Don't wait. They don't like the summer. You want to get them in as soon as you can before summer. So you're harvesting that stuff before they start to bolt into flower, and then they lose their flavor. Tomatoes, you could probably put a few tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, squash in the ground if you protect them, especially at the higher elevations. So you still got April you get that one last freaky weather event. There's going to be one more. I don't know. It's not on the forecast, but it's going to happen. You'll get that one last thing. And these tropical plants, the summer plants don't like spring. They like summer. And so tomatoes and peppers and squash, these are all summer plants. So, but I put a few in and I put plant protectors around this. These little mini greenhouse teepee things. You can put them in the ground, in the garden, put this plant protector around it. And I've literally had them snow on my plants and they were just fine. In fact, it heats up the soil where you plant this thing. So these summer plants like warm soil. Well, the soil is not warm yet. It's still kind of cool. The days are warm, but the soil is so cool. Well, it warms that soil up, just boom, just like that. So it really gets them rooting and growing fast. If you want to brag to your garden neighbors how you picked your first tomato and it's 3 weeks before theirs are even thinking about ripening, that's how you do it. Or a greenhouse. That's just cheating. You folks with greenhouses, I'm so jealous. I wish I had a greenhouse. I don't, but I've got plant protectors. So there's lots of vegetables in the herbs are just, the inventory is growing dramatically by the week at this point. Every Wednesday, here at the Insider Tip here at Waters Garden Center, every Wednesday afternoon, the new truck of flowers, vegetables, and herbs shows up. If you want prime time first pickings, show up Wednesday afternoon and you go right to the loading dock. and they're all right there. We've got a lot in store for you. Lisa Lain is coming in with your garden questions right after this. Waters companion plants for April are purple twist plums, perfume lilacs, columbine, and Arizona gaillardia.
Gaillardia is the perfect mountain perennial with huge fiery flowers on a compact plant.
She loves the heat and super drought hardy.
You can count on this bloomer to show off all summer long in raised beds, containers, or in the garden.
Javelina and rabbit proof. This bloomer is a must-have Arizona plant.
Arizona gaillardia, found at Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain and the Top 10 Gardener podcast. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show.
And we are back with Lisa Lain in the studio. She comes each week with your garden questions. Just what are other gardeners talking about in the local gardens? Just what's top of mind. So we try to share that because I think there's wisdom to be gleaned from learning from others. That's partly gardening. So Lisa, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Lots going on. Spring. It's been
spring has sprung.
Unload semi after semi. I was talking to a buddy of mine in Louisiana. He's got 3 garden centers there. And I talked to him at like 4:00 in the afternoon. And he looked tired. I went, man, what's going on? And he says, well, we just don't know that 8 semis. Ooh. So he's a big garden center.
Yeah.
And lots of garden centers. I went, oh gosh. So is it happening for you in Louisiana? And they're about 2-3 weeks ahead of us. He goes, yeah, it's happening. It's busy. So I always talk to friends in a zone or 2 warmer.
See what's
they'll
happening.
Tell you it's going to be a bad spring or it's going to be a great spring. Order more, get more stuff. They're buying fruit trees this year. Bring it. So anyway,
yeah,
Ben's a good friend.
Yes.
What kind of garden questions we got this week?
Well, sure. People are definitely back out in their yards looking at things. So Ellen, she lives out Williamson Valley, out in that part of the Prescott area. She's noticed that a lot of the oaks are turning brown. She wants to know, is there something wrong with them? Is there something, a disease, all that kind of stuff?
So oaks, so those folks new to the area, this is a standard thing that happens. Yes, they are evergreen scrub oaks, evergreen emery oaks, or evergreen, what's the other one? White oak. There's several, all the native oaks. They're evergreen, except when the new buds form in spring. So the new leaves are starting to form. And so as that new leaf bud forms, it shoots off or sheds last year's leaves. So yes, they're evergreen, but they're really not. Their autumn season is right now. So they're losing that leaf. It'll only be a flash. It'll be like a few days. And then as soon as it sheds that leaf, a new one comes right on. So don't worry. To have yellow oaks this time of year is very common. And every year we get the same question. So it's all right, Ellen. It's all right. What you can do. So our native oaks are more of a bluey color. So bluey, is that even a word?
I don't think
bluish.
So. Isn't that a cartoon?
Blue. So blue color. So if you want to bring out that blue color, fertilize it. Use the 744 all-purpose plant food right now as it's yellowing, and you will have the most beautiful, intense Arizona blue on your oaks. I mean, it'll be noticeable. I mean, if you really want to have the blue come out, give them some all-purpose plant food. It's a granular organic food, and give it some aluminum sulfate at the same time. Oh my gosh. They'll literally glow in the dark. I don't know, literally. Darn close to it. It'll feel like they're glowing. They'll pick up the moonlight and go woo, woo, woo. So, but mainly fertilize them. They're native, so it doesn't take a lot, but a little bit goes a long ways for your oaks. So it's very, very common.
Yep, it truly is. All right. Next question is from Justin. He wants to know, is it time to fire up the irrigation? And he says, most of my trees and shrubs are
Yeah.
3 to 4 years old. How
Perfect.
often should I be running that system?
Yeah. So we kind of opened with that. So irrigation, it's time. So April, you start turning on your irrigation every year. So and I gave the indication. So as the plants leaf or bloom, or we reach 70 degrees, any of those three markers. If it leaves, if it blooms, or it's 70 degrees, that's your cue. Never have to ask again. Turn the irrigation on. It's going to be in April always. And so for this central part of Arizona. Okay, how often do you water it? That was the real question. So I'd turn it on by hand and just let it run through a full cycle. Then I would turn it on a second time uh, just to do some maintenance to it. So run it so you can see where the wet spots are. If you just run it for a few minutes, you can't tell. Where's that irrigation? Where is the head on this thing? If you run it for a full cycle, whatever that normally is, and then you go back and turn it on, all of a sudden you'll see the wet spot, which will help guide you through to where the emitter is. You can see, do I have streams of water shooting all over the yard? Do I have cracked elbows that on the main distribution line? Or the spaghetti heads, the spaghetti tubing, or the finer 1/4-inch lines? Is the emitter there, or did the pack rats eat that off? You'll need some tune-up. Just don't just turn it on and tune it up. It's really easy to replace a head. It's like 49 cents. Cut it off with some scissors, stick a new one in, you're set. Even the elbows or tees, sometimes I'll have water settle in ours and it's frozen, it cracked. So it didn't blow off. It's leaking. It should be leaking there. And so if you see it leaking, we'll just replace it. It's a $1.50 part. It takes a set of pruners and just slip them in. It's really easy to maintain. Mm-hmm. And then you turn it on. Now, the real question, after you tuned it up, about once a week, your trees and shrubs, 2-3 years old, you are established. So the roots have gone from the bucket of the plant. They're now extended out. They probably tripled in size since you planted those back 3-4 years ago. And now you should be able to take the pressure off. What you might do is tune up or extend or expand those emitters, because now all of a sudden the plant is also twice the size. The roots are bigger. So the roots mirror that upper section, upper branch structure or drip line of the plant. You might have to actually take those 2 emitters right at the base of that tree or shrub and maybe put a T in there and put 3 emitters or 4 emitters, just double down and bring it out a little bit further out around that drip line of that plant so it keeps it healthy. So the feeder roots of a plant are always at the outer tips of that drip line. They're not at the base. The trunk has a big anchoring, kind of barky. They're just there to hold the tree or shrub upright. They're not there to take in moisture or food. Those are fine root hairs further out in the drip line. So you want to put that emitter head out where the plant can pick up the water. Mm-hmm. Did we answer all that?
That's trees and shrubs. So. And I don't think you can emphasize enough how important it is to actually do some maintenance on your irrigation. Yeah. I mean, every year I get customers come in, something died because it was clogged or overwatered because it didn't have a head. So super important to do that.
I was talking to a customer after the class last weekend. She said, I'm having my irrigation put in. I don't want to see any of that hardware. I said, well, yeah, I would bury all the main lines, but I really do like to see my emitter head. I want to see where that thing's popping up so I can see it running. I physically want to run the system and see it dripping for maintenance wise, because sometimes contractors will bury it under the ground and it will run underground.
But you don't know.
But you don't know when snails and slugs have clogged up earwigs, lay their eggs inside that tiny orifice, or if gophers ate the tip off or something happened. It just blew off the end. You just don't know. I want to see it physically there. I'll kind of tuck it where I don't see all the hardware. I don't want to see hardware either. But I do want to see the emitter head so I can watch it running for my own knowledge.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one more. So Sharon has 3 pinyon pines on her property. 2 look good. 1 not so good. It's kind of turning brown needles. It looks like it's lost some of its coloring. Yeah. She wants to know, is there hope for it?
Where's she at again?
It just says Prescott.
Prescott, okay. You need to bring in a sample immediately. Yeah, that plant is at risk of dying if you don't get a sample in here. I'm guessing you've got pinyon pine scale. We can identify it in a flash. We can give you a quick lesson on what to look for. But with that yellowing one, actually all three of them, if you got it on one, it's just a matter, it'll spread to the other two. Just you've got some issues. Not personally. Your pinyon pines have issues. You need to fertilize them with 744 all-purpose plant food. And more importantly, you need to put some tree and shrub drench. There's a bug preventer that gets rid of the scale. So my guess is you're going to see dots on the needles that are scales, and it's causing this, it's sucking the plant dry. So you're seeing this yellowing. Very critical. And it just decimates your pine. You're in risk. Bring a sample in. Anyone that's got brown on their pine trees, bring a sample in right away. We are out of time. Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back.
Growing up in Prescott, we knew spring was here when my grandmother's lilacs bloomed. I'm Lisa Waters Lain, and my grandmother would be thrilled with the new Bloomerang purple lilacs at Waters Garden Center. They don't just bloom once in spring, they bloom again in summer. Mine bloomed 3 times last year, making spring last well into fall. Come check out all the heavenly new sights and scents that are making this spring the most beautiful ever. Lilacs like Grandma used to grow and better. Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to Ken Lain, aka the Top 10 Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Family Garden Center. Listen daily as he answers the top 10 questions of the week, streaming on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Garden Show with garden expert Ken Lain. Join the conversation daily as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Or visit face-to-face throughout the week where he can be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So if you are going to grow tomatoes this spring, here's some insider tips that'll really put a game changer for you. Or I'll cover some mistakes, and here's some insider tips that I do that have tomatoes that are just juicy, that melt in your mouth. Oh my gosh, you're so good. The one I find that is a rookie move. So newer folks, they start to enrich the soil, and it's lots of manures. And manure is good. You need manure. But if that's all that you do, what happens is these plants will just ignite with new growth, and you'll get this huge tomato. It's the size of I am. I mean, 6 foot tall. It's indeterminate tomatoes. They keep growing and growing and growing. It's almost no limit, except for winter finally takes them out, but they just keep growing. But they haven't set a fruit. What that is, we've loaded the soil up with too much rich manure. And so it's all nitrogen. Manure is nitrogen. Remember, nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, the 3 numbers. First number is nitrogen. That's green growth, foliage, grass. That's they love. Grass, lawn food is 2100. All green growth. The middle number, phosphorus, that's fruits. Fruits and roots get you, that's what you want, tomatoes. You want that middle number, nitrogen, green growth. Phosphorus is the middle number. Potash is the last number. And that's stem sturdiness. How upright will it stand up in the wind? Are the leaves thick enough to keep from burning? Do the stems hold up the fruits of your eggplants and your cucumbers? And that's sturdiness, disease resistance. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potash. That middle number, you really do need some middle numbers for your tomatoes. So that's bone meal. Superphosphate. Superphosphate is 18 0. It's all phosphorus. So when I'm planting especially my summer plants, things that are forming a fruit on them, well, remember that middle number, fruits and roots. If you want more fruits, put that on there. Deeper roots, put some phosphorus on there. I'll sprinkle a little bit of that underneath each of my plants. So I'll dig my hole for my tomato. I'll sprinkle a touch of, I like superphosphate, put some superphosphate on there. I'll kick just a touch of dirt over it. So the roots are going through this phosphate through the phosphorus, picks it up, and I get tremendous fruits. It's a game changer. And then I plant the rest of the plant. Another insider tip for tomatoes, things that grow fast and the fruits swell up some. So my pumpkins, I do this. I notice squash, it helps a lot. Peppers, game changer. Tomatoes, especially. We make a product called Aqua Boost here at the Garden Center. Aqua Boost are polymer crystals. What polymer crystals do is they hold like 200 times their weight in water. And so they keep the root area around a vegetable plant, a flower, of something that's needs more consistent water. It keeps the water regulation much better. What happens is tomatoes especially are notorious for real thick, hard, tough skins, or the skin will actually swell up during the evening and crack and then shrink during the day. And that ebb and flow, that plumpiness and then shrinking down causes this cracking on your fruits. Well, Aqua Boost, when I'm putting my superphosphate down to the bottom where the roots are, I'll sprinkle some phosphate and some Aqua Boost crystals underneath the roots. So it keeps that soil, can absorb all that moisture, and it regulates. It gives it back to the plant as it needs it to the heat of the day. So I have less swelling up during the evening, shrinking during the day, the heat of the day. This ebb and flow tends to cause cracking of the skin or toughness. It's a game changer. So if you want sweet, juicy, I think it's unique to an arid climate. So spring is very dry and windy until July. And then our monsoons come. But between now and then, the fruits can get stressed during the day and really gets plumped back up during the evening, and they just grow. The Aqua Boost crystals and the superphosphate, you do those two things, you will have better tomatoes, better squash, better cucumbers, better beans. I mean, just if it's forming a fruit, you're going to get more of that because you're giving it the nutrients it needs. I think you need some manure. But if that's all you give it, it's not enough. And so that's where I actually created it's called fruit and vegetable food. It's an organic food. It's got 6-4-4-7. It's got 6% nitrogen, 4% phosphorus, 4% potash, and 7% calcium. Calcium is another one you can be lacking in your gardens. Calcium is it's what causes flavor, size of fruit. It also prevents blossom end rot. So if you've ever had a tomato that had a black spot where the flower was, or peppers can do that. Squash will actually, let's say zucchini, will start forming, then it turns yellow and falls off. These are all calcium deficiencies. We have a lack of calcium here in this central highlands of Arizona. I know that about your garden, so I created a fertilizer just for our gardens. It's called Waters Fruit and Vegetable Food, 6-4-4-7% calcium. You might give it some calcium. That's as far as I can go. I'm out of time. I'll go deeper. But right now, let's take a break. Be right back.
Waters Garden companion plants of the month are lilac, poppy, purple plum, and our white night candy tuft.
Masses of fragrant white flowers cover mounds of perennial green foliage.
Extreme heat and cold tolerant, this award winner repeatedly blooms without deadheading for super easy care.
Butterflies, bees, hummingbirds are going to love your backyard again.
White Night Candy Tuft can only be found at Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. The Top 10 Gardener, your source for timely garden advice, seasonally correct for the garden, guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lain in the studio. She comes each week and I just close my mouth and listen to her wisdom of her garden wisdom.
I think we all know better.
Anyone that's tuned in for more than one show, one segment of one show knows I like to talk.
Yes, you do.
Anyway, Lisa comes and just shares her thoughts on gardening. So trying to get that woman's perspective. My business partner, my mother of four children, the mother of our children. Whatever. Thanks for the help. I'll now be quiet and listen to your sage advice on gardening.
There we go. I like it. So what made me think of this week's topic is 5 reasons to update your landscape. So what made me think about it is because you've actually been doing quite a bit of work in our yard, actually on the house, putting some new fascia on the backyard and the house.
Pavers.
And I was, we did some pavers and, so much of the time we're updating our kitchens, we're updating our bathrooms, or we update the paint or a lot of different things. And we forget to take a good look at that landscape. And a dated or ugly landscape, it ruins the curb appeal of your house. So I think landscapes need to be updated as much as the inside of the house.
I would agree. Maybe more so because that juniper row, that dead branch on that big pine tree, that weeds growing up in between the rock lawn.
Right.
Boy, that brings you down so quick.
Definitely. You know what I think ages houses in this area is railroad timbers.
Oh yeah. Cedar, Pecky cedar,
Pecky
or railroad.
cedar.
It
railroad.
Screams of late 80s, early 90s.
You're like, oh, that's an older house. But some of the reasons. So I had 5 reasons. Hopefully we'll get through them. But number 1 is shrubs don't live forever.
No.
Trees actually don't live forever. And like people, they get a little older and they start sagging a little bit and they need a little touch up, but maybe sometimes they're just done.
Yeah.
They've lived the lifespan, so if they're not blooming anymore, if they're discolored, if there's dead spots, a lot of these older junipers, like you said, you'll find a whole dead branch in there. It's not reaching, the shrubs and trees just aren't reaching their size. They look scraggly. They look
thin and
wispy. Definitely time to pull those out because there's nothing. It just is sad to see. And they're living
like sad plants.
I know. You can try fertilizing them, maybe watering if you haven't taken good care of them. But if you've done everything you could and they're still just, it's time to put some fresh stuff in there and kind of update that. If they've overgrown an area. So this is something I see a lot. People put these cute little shrubs and trees in, and then, 5-6 years down the road, it's like, what's that plant in Little Shop of Horrors? Seymour. Or it's literally taken over front doors, patio walkways. Either try to trim it back, but sometimes once they get that big,
they look butchered with them.
You can't get them back to size. So take it out of there. Put something that's actually going to fit what you want. So if it's under a window and you don't want a shrub covering that window, there's lots of shrubs out there that stay in that 3 to 4 foot range. So pick something that is going to work better in your landscape.
For $40, you can dig that, put a brand new one in, and you're set for another 5, 6, 7 years of enjoyment, and without all the heartache and mange in your yard.
That's what I think. I mean, photinias, I love red tip photinias. They can be a really pretty plant, and it's used here extensively, but it can be a really ugly plant too, because they just get overgrown, they get yellowed. So, got to look at those things. So a lot of times we move into homes that already have existing landscapes, and it may just not be what you think of as a pretty landscape. So there's nothing stopping you from going and refurbishing that landscape. Make it yours. If you moved into a home that has like a real xeriscape landscape, yuccas, things like that, and you're like, man, I just don't like those. You can rip those out and put other things
or add
in.
two. You don't have to rip out. You can add two.
Or you could rip it out.
Put your thumbprint on it. You don't have to have someone else's personality in your yard. You can have
your
own.
Make it yours. Whether you want xeriscape, whether you want low maintenance, or you want that English garden look, you can certainly make it yours. And we live in such a wonderful area that you can do those kind
It's
of
diverse.
landscapes. It's very
Yeah.
diverse. So you make it yours, definitely. Number 4 is curb appeal. And by that, I mean, drive through your neighborhood,
Yeah.
drive by your house.
Yeah.
What does your house need? Is it lacking something? Maybe it looks fine. I don't know.
Start with the mailbox and go down the driveway and the entry.
Right. So you definitely want to keep your front beds, your clean and neat. Mulch on there or shredded cedar bark looks nice. Get rid of the weeds.
Yeah.
So many times we let those weeds crop up, and I know people get busy and it's hard to get out there in that yard. But boy, if you use your weed and grass preventer or get rid of those weeds when they're young
Yeah.
and just starting to grow, it makes the house look so much neater and tidier when those weeds just aren't coming up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely get rid of
We
the
can help
weeds.
you with weeds. That's
Oh, yeah.
easy. But there's a little learning curve.
Mhm.
Or just ask the right question. How do I kill weeds? We'll help you with that. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. I mean, we have a pretty good sized piece of property. It's not huge, but we hardly
Don't
ever
have
pick a
weeds,
weed out of
'cause
there.
I don't like weeding.
So if you keep up on it, you can save yourself a lot of work, and it just looks so much better. You can create new plant beds. So maybe you are in a house that's just very sterile out front, doing some raised planters or putting perennial beds in, and we can help you design those and create those, and just give you a really a better homey look.
Just a
out
pretty
front.
pot.
Well, that's my next
Oh,
hint.
sorry.
Yeah. Bring in some
Thanks.
containers. Yeah. Container gardening and planting is so easy.
Yeah.
And talk about bringing color in. I mean, we've got reds and greens and blues and turquoise and just some really nice colors. So bringing in that by your front door or at the end of by a mailbox or a driveway really can freshen up a house. Now he's not going to talk.
No, that's great. You're on a roll. I'm waiting for number 5.
The other one is maybe you want to put a specimen tree in.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty.
So if you have a pretty blank yard, bringing in a tree that is unique or unusual, that's of size, and putting it in the front and then doing some beds and potting around it really can make a huge difference. And
accent.
Yeah. So we have some really cool like serpentine atlas cedars that would be really nice. We have some creeping deodar cedars. We've got some weeping
Arizona cypress.
Arizona
I saw those.
cypress, yeah.
That's pretty neat. Yeah.
And so just something that's unusual.
I think there's even a weeping
unique.
redwood out there. So there's some really fun, interesting, different things. But it could be as simple as a rose tree.
Oh yeah.
Or just a bigger specimen, redbud. Something
Redbud,
that just go,
crab
wow,
apple.
that's neat.
Something that really catches you. A lot of the crab apples are I'm almost out of time. Because crab apples give you like 2 or 3 seasons worth of colors. So it's something to always look at out there in the yard. And then my last reason is just because you want to.
Oh, there you go. I like that reason. I'm in America. I want 40 cents. Upsize it. Supersize.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to get out there and make some changes in the yard.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. So give us a real quick countdown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom.
Oh my gosh. 1, they just need replacing. They look old, ugly. 2, they've overgrown the area. 3, you just want to make it yours. 4, you need to bump up your curb appeal, make it look prettier. And then 5 is just because you want to.
Yeah, that's good. I think we don't remodel our exterior. I tell folks, change 10% of your plants in your yard every year. That way, every 10 years, you've always got freshness coming on somewhere in the yard. So your plants don't age and they get that saggy, old, overgrown, woody look. This is especially important for Russian sage, roses, autumn sage. These are all things that they have a definite lifespan, and that's about 7, 8, 10 years at most. All right, Ken and Lisa Lain, the Mountain Gardeners, will be back.
Water's Garden companion plants of the month are lilac, poppy, columbine, and our purple twist plum.
This Arizona plum is the ideal purple tree between evergreens.
Blooms in a profusion of pink flowers that precede the deep purple foliage.
Large enough to use as a front yard tree and behaved enough to use as a street tree.
Plant pairs flanking gateways, driveways, or an orchard like rows to screen neighbors.
Purple Twist Plum can only be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Additional shows of this podcast, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook, Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Welcome to the Top 10 Garden Show with Ken Lain. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
And we are back on The Mountain Gardener, your host, Ken Lain, every week. And the beauty of having a studio right here at the Garden Center is when one of your best sales reps comes in, the guy that is in charge of the Lexus, the Cadillac, the best of the best as far as plant growing. Jim Rupe is coming to train our staff. I thought, Jim, you've got to share some of that with our listeners. This is great stuff. They want to know this stuff. So Jim Rupe with Monrovia Growers is here. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Ken. Happy to be here. Appreciate it.
So now tell us, to just background for us, just interest for folks. You've been in the grower business, the agribusiness, for how many years, or how'd you get into this?
How we got into it. Actually, one of your employees asked me this, one of your new employees asked me this today when I was talking to her. And it started in high school. I was in the ag classes in our high school.
Really?
I was fortunate. My high school in San Diego had agriculture class. So I took that and started falling in love with plants.
Yeah.
And, one December, senior year, he said, hey, one of the local garden centers needs help for cut Christmas trees.
Of all things.
Of all things. So
dead plants, selling dead things, cut from the roots.
So sure, that sounds good. And I think he hired about 6 people for help.
Yeah.
Grunts like me. And he kept 2 that showed promise. And luckily I was one of them.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with plants and learning about them at the garden center. And I stayed with the company, worked my way up to assistant manager and then to manager of a couple of their stores.
Wow.
This is in the San Diego area. And then the Monrovia sales rep that I used to buy from, he said, hey, Jim, you should come work for us.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I thought about it and I said, sure, I'll do that. And so I started with Monrovia in 1988, I think, up in our Oregon location.
Yeah.
So last year I just had
So you moved from San Diego, went to Oregon, started as a sales rep there.
Yep.
Married and kids at that point? Or you're still single, young buck?
I met my lovely wife up there. Which today is actually our 33rd anniversary.
Happy anniversary. That's awesome. Congratulations.
She was actually working at Monrovia when we met. So one of those. So
you like dating the staff. So.
Yeah. One of those fun love stories, you know.
That's great.
That's where I started at. So I think 36 years ago, because last year I had my 35th anniversary of Monrovia. So anyways, I started out in San Diego as a sales rep. Now I've been in Prescott since 2001.
Yeah.
Working with you for
all that time,
23 years. Yeah.
The whole time.
So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So Jim, he represents Monrovia for the entire state of Arizona. So large state, growing state. So you've got a diverse plant mix that you deal with, but you choose to live right here in Prescott.
Yeah. So, it's the best place to live in Prescott. I mean, Arizona. Yeah. It's as my wife calls it, the livable part of Arizona. So we get a taste of winter, but it's not bad at all.
Right. And it warms right up.
Warms up, and it's not too hot, and we get summer rains, and our climate is conducive here to growing a lot of plants.
Yes, it really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a customer, and she's like, "Oh, we're zone 7, right?" And I said, "Yeah," but I said, there's a fair amount of zone 8 plants we can grow here, like a Rhaphileptus.
Yeah.
And some other zone 8s. Not every zone 8 plant will grow in Prescott, but the reason we can grow a fair amount of zone 8 plants is we have a wonderful acclimation period where we start cooling off to freezing in end of September, early October.
Yeah. And
you have 2 months of, mild freezing temperatures. So nothing too radical. The plants really start to go into dormancy. And then by the time we have any real cold, A lot of plants, they do fine. Even some
You're
of
able to acclimate,
they acclimate
slowly
Yeah.
into winter instead of this dramatic, oh my gosh, freezing. Now it's 19 degrees.
Yeah. You take a Rhaphileptus in Texas that's they get 5 degrees or 7 degrees. They rarely got below freezing up until then. It just dies.
Yeah.
But here
it thrives.
They thrive.
We didn't think Indian hawthorn or Rhaphileptus would grow here because it was off the zone. But, I grew a couple of them. We introduced them. We put some of the downtown planters around the courthouse and they thrived.
Yeah.
And went, wow, we just found a whole nother plant mix that is very diverse. There's a lot of varieties. You probably supply 4, 5, or 6 different varieties to us, and they all thrive and do well. Nice evergreen shrub, fragrant pink to white flowers. It doesn't get too big. It stays easily under control without any pruning or maintenance. It's a great plant.
Yeah. And they're also going to be coming into bloom here real soon.
So they're heavily budded right now.
I was just looking at, you have a good selection of them now, and won't be long. They'll be blooming.
Plant. So now Monrovia, tell us about that. So how many farms do you have, and how many acres or how many plants? Just folks that maybe aren't familiar with farming. Is this like a 10-acre thing, or is this like thousands of acres?
Well, it's 10 acres times
10
times
or more.
10, 20, 30. Yeah. We have 4 locations. All your plants come from our West Coast locations up in Oregon, and then the Central Valley of California. So, and everything Oregon, of course, we grow a lot of the conifers and stuff like that. In Visalia, we grow a lot of perennials, deciduous shrubs that are good for this area, acclimate well to this area.
Yeah.
And then we have a location in Georgia and up in Connecticut. So, but all your stuff comes here.
What grows in Connecticut? I mean, hydrangeas in Georgia, of course. So some of that southern mix. But
we're known for our rhododendrons.
Really?
Rhododendrons, hollies, grasses.
Okay, I can see that.
And they do a really good job in perennials. For the summer too.
Yeah.
And they supply our northeast market.
Yeah. Skagit just went out of business, or they just sold their property.
Yeah.
That's a famous perennial grower.
Big shocker. Yeah.
Sure would be nice to have those perennials from the Monrovia, Connecticut, brought this way. Just fill the truck up, bring it this way. We'd probably buy some.
We're fortunate though. We've got a good selection out of Oregon.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Not anything. Not anything different that we would have.
Hydrangeas from Georgia. I would love to have those. Just bring those on over. I'd love to have that in a big one. Just
we
kidding.
need to look at that.
Just
You're right.
kidding.
But
just kidding.
I was just in the Visalia Forum last week. We had a sales meeting.
Yeah.
And our hydrangeas coming on, they're looking really good.
Yeah.
They're like a really good crop coming on.
So are they going to bloom? I would like to have them bloom in April when the core customers come in. They're always blooming end of May, June, July, August.
Right.
Is there a way to speed them up so they're more inspiring for I'd love to have hydrangeas in full bloom for Mother's Day.
Right.
Can we pull that off?
Well, we would have to put them in probably a heated house a little bit sooner.
So that's the only way
to really do it.
Okay.
And they're outside, and just with the weather, it's usually sometime in
even if I say
sometimes
which is
it kind of happens a little mid-May. They would start blooming. But
so what's your favorite plant? If you only had one, you're going to go on a desert island, you only take one plant with you. What would that one plant be? It could be anything: tree, shrub, perennial, annual, but only one. This is hard for plant nerd.
It is, yeah. Wow, on a desert island. So, you need shade. So I probably want a fast-growing tree, right?
You've got plenty of palms around, so there's coconuts. Don't hurt yourself.
That's like that. What's your favorite song? So it's what's my mood?
Yeah.
If I had to drink, I don't know. It's But I would say my favorite plant goes with a season.
Oh,
I just can't say. I can't say there is a favorite plant.
Yeah.
I was probably my favorite plant coming up when they're in bloom to see blooming is a wisteria to me. I just love seeing wisteria bloom.
Yeah.
They have those long 6-inch panicles of dangling
flowers
that are fragrant.
Yeah.
And they're just a showstopper when they bloom.
Yeah.
So that's favorite tree when they start blooming around here. I'd love to see the red buds blooming.
That's true.
One of my favorites to see blooming.
And the new varieties coming out are so spectacular.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. They get better every year.
Right. So I can't just give you a favorite. It's just, it kind of goes by the season.
Okay. Non-committal.
So,
I get it.
Okay. Yeah.
Mine would probably be for blooming. I mean, redbud's good. It's hardy, but crab apples have that vivid color. Oh my gosh. We've got some magnolias here that are in full bloom. I mean, like crimson flower, huge, big as your hand. This is spectacular. So perennials, I don't know. There's so many great ones.
Yeah. What do you go?
So,
coneflower is probably one of my favorites.
I like euphorbias.
Yeah.
So the gopher plant to rainbow ascot to, just they're so easy and they're evergreen all the time.
Yeah.
Shrub, probably lilacs. Love lilacs.
Yeah.
So
See,
fragrance.
you can't come up with a favorite either. So.
We are out of time. 10 minutes like that.
Wow,
I appreciate
that
you
was
being
easy.
here. And thanks for making my staff better so we can share and impart that information you give to our staff to local gardeners. It means a lot.
I enjoy working with your staff.
Jim Rupe with Monrovia Growers. We'll be right back right after this. Waters Garden companion plants of the month are lilac, poppy, purple plums, and our songbird columbine.
This graceful beauty dances in the shade of the garden, holding its head high, smiling back at you.
This bloomer comes back each spring with lacy green foliage, promptly followed by amazing two-tone flowers.
An excellent cut flower that is both deer and rabbit resistant.
So hardy, some varieties naturally call Arizona home.
Songbird columbine can only be found at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. You're listening to garden expert Ken Lain. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Thanks for tuning in to the Top 10 Garden Show. You've tuned in to the Top 10 Gardener with garden expert Ken Lain. Join him daily as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lain.
So now roses are actually making a comeback. And so we are starting to have roses come to the garden center, and they are in bloom. Some, not all, some. They're all growing, and we've got different varieties. So there's basically there's ground cover roses. It's called carpet roses. There's shrub roses. These are old fashioned. I just want something in the landscape that blooms nonstop without any care. They might not be the most fragrant. They might not be the biggest, but there's so many of them. You can look at them all the way across. They are in color. Butterflies, hummingbirds, love them. Those are shrub roses. Then you've got the ones your grandparents grew, your hybrid teas, your floribundas, long stem roses. You've got climbing roses. You've got English roses. There's a lot of varieties. These are the ones that are fragrant, magical colors. These are the ones that are the rose of the year. And we've got all those. And then you've got your specialty kind of things. These would be tree roses, different sizes. I really put your English peonies or English roses in that category because they're so unique. Climbing, your climbing roses. Right now we've got in bloom the climbing tombstone rose or Lady Banks rose. So in Arizona, we call it tombstone because there's a 150-year-old Lady Banks rose planted in the middle of town. It's just huge, magnificent. It looks like a tree. It's magnificent. The rest of the world calls it Lady Banks. It's a thornless evergreen rose that's pretty. The flowers are smaller. There's a lot of them, but it's mainly soft and it's pretty. It grows fast and it's a climber. Oh my gosh. Here's what you'll find with roses in the local area. We've had roses here at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. We've had roses since February. They've been dormant, so you'll see them. And we planted them last year. They're fully rooted in peat pots. So these fiber pots, they're made to go on the ground. You get some exotic colors, the newer varieties you get then, but they're not in bloom. Here in 2 weeks, I'll have 1,000 roses, but the last week in April, I'll have 1,000 roses show up all in bloom. You'll know it's time. We try to schedule it so that we're for sure out of the risk of frost, because the frost won't harm the rose bush, but it will take the flower. And so I don't want to invest 1,000 roses. That's a lot of money, a lot of plants. So the frost could take away the flower the next night. So I'll wait. We time it. That generally here in Prescott, it's going to be the last week in April. There'll be a lot of them. Every color, every shape, every size, every fragrance. If you're thinking about a rose, that's the time, because you can touch and smell and see how it really reacts to your color palette, how it smells to you. You get to be right there. It's kind of a fun time. If you're into roses, it's the time. Before that, we've got quite a few roses now, not as many, but they're starting to show up. Lots of shrub roses, lots of carpet roses, some climbing roses, all the Lady Banks roses. This is the time. So you're sliding into the rose season. And so we'll feature those here. I'll let you all know. I'm sure we're going to have Instagram, Facebook. We're going to have a YouTube feed on, hey, all the roses are here. Let me show you my favorite. That whole thing that we do as retailers or as gardeners, we just get excited when the rose truck comes. It's exciting. So this week, the garden class is fruit and vegetables. Next week, I think it's on flowers or lilacs or something, but every Saturday at 9:30, we have a garden class. They're free. Please join us. Come in. Throughout the week, Lisa and I, we camp here at Waters Garden Center. We love talking to fans of the show. Waters companion plants for April are purple twist plums, perfume lilacs, columbine, and Arizona gaillardia.
Gaillardia is the perfect mountain perennial with huge fiery flowers on a compact plant.
She loves the heat and super drought hardy.
You can count on this bloomer to show off all summer long in raised beds, containers, or in the garden.
Javelina and rabbit proof. This bloomer is a must-have Arizona plant.
Arizona gaillardia, found at Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success in landscape that just feels better, then tune in daily to the Top 10 Garden Podcast. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.